Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you see a little link down below, you can actually click on it. It'll take you to Zoom. If you click on that, you'll take you to Mukana. And from there, you become one of the producers. You're really driving the whole conversation here. What you ask and what you vote on really drives the entire conversation, the entire show. So it's really important for you to do that if you can. We open the doors at 6 a.m. So if you're thinking about coming on to the actual panel, which we would love to have you come on and join us. Please come in early, check your kit, make sure that it's all working, make sure everything's running properly and that you'll fit in. And then raise your hand, your digital hand, at 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time if you want to join the panel. Now, you can actually raise it anytime from 6 a.m. on and join the conversation. I can't promise anything. We're just chit-chatting as we go through this, but you can anywhere until 6:40 when we start doing mic checks. Once we start doing mic checks, this is the size of the panel. The first hour is a general discussion where we talk about any of your questions around virtual media or just media production in general. Second hour is something we've decided to spend a little bit more time on. So today we're going to talk about social and how we use different social media platforms for our work. Tomorrow we're going to talk about storage. Where do we put all this stuff? We're shooting incredible. We got these 6K cameras generating all this content, and we're going to try to figure out what kind of hard drives and what do we do locally, what do we do remotely, all those things. Saturday is the long day. We'll do education for a couple hours, and then Nick Jushishin's going to come in and talk about Unreal. We might get Nick was in earlier, showing off the MetaHuman project. I guess they've already let him into the beta or into using it, and so he's showing that off. It is super cool, and I'm sure that he'll show off a little bit more during our Saturday session from 10 to 11:30, and then in the evening, we will at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We're going to make kimchi pancakes with Madeline Smithberg at Mad in the Kitchen. And I realized I was on a call and I didn't get it inserted, so we're going to post the recipe in the tomorrow's so what you need to go order or buy. We'll post that into the mail out tomorrow, and then we'll also post it in Discord today. And anybody can do that. Sky, if you or JJ can put it into the cooking area, we have the purchase list that you need to join it. We'd love to have you join the meeting, and we'll post it in tomorrow, so you'll have a link that you can register for the meeting. Even if you're not cooking along, join the meeting. So join the meeting and watch. You can be part of that conversation. What we found is that people like to click on multiple people cooking at the same time, following along, and get to watch everybody cooking all together. So it's a different kind of show, and I think that we're on the verge of a whole different kind of media. And so I think that there's something that we've been discovering in this process. So I would highly recommend checking it out. That's going to be Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So definitely put that into your plans. It's going to be worth checking out. We've got a couple people here that are going to be in the show that goes to YouTube as well. So we're pretty excited about that. Anyway, let's get this thing going. Bill, what do we got?
Well, we've got a lot of stuff, but before that, somebody pinged me with, is this some big special occasion for you, Alex?
Today?
Yes.
No, not today. Yesterday was.
No, I said somebody said something about a wedding anniversary of.
It's not a wedding anniversary. It's not my wedding anniversary. Oh, okay. It was so what it was is I tweeted out yesterday. This is a funny thing how these things go is that I was yesterday I tweeted out that it was the day that I met my wife. So which I can remember very clearly. I had to speak at speak at the Bay Area Media Group, I think BAM or whatever, and I didn't want to. I was completely unprepared. I was like, I'm just gonna have to make something up in front of a lot of people, and which I've done more often than I'd like to admit. And so I threw some stuff together, and I was very stressed, and I was like, I should just call it off and tell them I'm sick, and I was like, no, I better just go. And so I went. And there's this beautiful girl in the back of the room, and then a whole bunch of people mobbed me afterwards. The talk turned out fine, and there's half the room was sitting there talking to me. And by the time they all finished, she was gone. And I was like, what happened? She's gone. And I was just like, oh no. Because I was even saying stuff like she's African American. And I even looked out there and I said, and I do work in Africa. Like I was doing anything I could during the show to try to engage her to come up and talk to me afterwards. And so anyway, this one woman talked my ear off that night. And then I got this long letter the next day about all the things that she wanted to do. And I was like, I think this woman is actually crazy, because I thought I had connected it to the person that had been talking to me the night before. But I was like, I had this policy that if you send me an earnest letter, I'll meet with you for 15 minutes. Like that was like, because I want people to do that with me. I have to do it with everybody else. And so I had this policy to do that. And anyway, so she showed up. It was her. And then I hired her for 2 months, and then we started dating. 2 months into it, she had to quit working for me and just get it. And then we've been together for 20 years. So now we got married 15 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So and she's amazing. So anyway, that was the that's what I had tweeted out. Okay. Anyway, so we'll jump into it.
Okay, so James in Dublin, Ireland has our first question for today. He says, listening to this show, it seems that if you buy into the Blackmagic design ecosystem, you need to go all in. Are there any other AV suppliers who provide the same level of integration across their products to the extent Blackmagic do? Is the Blackmagic ecosystem worth it?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I would think you could argue that Apple does. It's not the same AB, but if you're into the Apple ecosystem, they make it incredibly simple for you to cross-pollinate between their computers, their phones, their software, and everything. So they're probably the closest runner-up to what Blackmagic is doing, but Blackmagic is extraordinary in that. There's
actually a lot of companies that have pretty much the same offering, whether it's Sony or Grass Valley. There's nobody at that price point. Nobody at the Blackmagic price point does it. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, on the location sound point, the point of things, Zaxcom, if you go into and get a Zaxcom mixer, it just makes sense to go with their wireless as well because they're so well integrated. And also on the post-production sound side of things, Avid, if you jump into Avid, it's easier to stay within their ecosystem. There's a lot of things you have to go through if you want to mix and match.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So for gamers, and most of us have Stream Decks, but Elgato has an enclosed area where if you buy the lights, you buy the cameras, you buy or not the cameras, the capture cards, and the Stream Deck, that all works together as one.
Yeah, but as far as like cameras and switchers and everything else, it gets hard to match what Blackmagic's doing. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I remember I shot a show. I was running camera for a show with CeeLo Green. And I had this Grass Valley, and I just remember looking at the picture quality and being in awe. And they're like, "Yeah, just the body, $70,000." So when you're looking at, some of these other ones like the Kula or the Kula 2, I mean, you're getting way up there to the big bucks. So yeah, there's other stuff. It's just really expensive.
And what Blackmagic has gotten really good at is building this integrated solution that is relatively affordable. I mean, there's not really anything else in that price point. And the fact that you can get, and the thing that's kind of devastating is the fact that you can get into a switcher for $300, and now you can, and it can be connected to a computer or not. It's pretty stable, and then there is a smooth transition all the way up to much bigger switchers and tools, and all of them have relatively the same interface and the same approach. So it's a really tight. I don't know how people are going to be able to compete with it as they keep going, as they keep on adding the pieces. They don't hit it every time. I don't think the bridge is necessarily a great one, and they still haven't figured out audio. So it's not like it's perfect, but they're definitely, absorbing an awful lot. And then when you tie it into the software, now you can cut something on an HM Extreme ISO or regular ISO, have that edit come all the way into the software. Tying all those pieces together is pretty dramatic. Next question.
Luca Pascal Giannini of Montreal, Canada says, regarding your choice of your background and talking head framing, could you elaborate on the rationale for gradually changing background since last year going from a peeks into your environment approach to a more neutral background? What do you think is the more professional looking, and what are some of your thinking?
I find the one that I have now is more sustainable. So that's why I use it. A solid background back there with a little bit of a light changing or whatever is just easier for me to manage. I don't have to manage a whole room, and I don't have anything interesting behind me to look at. It's a window to the deck, so it's kind of a nice view, but it's not something I'd have to deal with the sun. So the reason that I do it is specifically because of that. It's not I can't say that it's because I am planning to build a set here. I do think the folks here that have, like, if you look at Jim Hankins' set, I like that better. like I like what he's doing there with a soft, soft bokeh. If you look at what Victor's doing, I like things that have a nice soft bokeh that look good and you see the scene. So I would say I feel like that's a superior look. I just don't have it. I don't have a room to do that in right now, or a build that I'm about to go through it. Probably in May. I have to build up for something in June, so I'm probably going to build out the set in May, and so that'll be the next step for me because I want it to look a different way. It also I will say this compresses better, so I will look better in front of a blanker screen. Because all the bits that Zoom is putting into it are going to one thing as opposed to all the things. Go ahead, Rupert, and then Leo, and then Leland.
I can say managing a whole room takes a lot of work.
Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, going from there. I've always wondered whether I should be going for a much similar look to you, Alex, with the single screen behind. But I've always found with a bokeh and getting something in there, and I've swapped and changed 100 times, as you know. But I just feel that it gives an alternative look to each person. And we've talked about it before with Mickey in particular. His view is like he's got the world in there. He's got the world is in that room.
Yeah. If I had the once I have a set, I want to use the set. What I also realized is that I might have to travel. And so as a result, I wanted to be able to like carry something behind me that would look the same. So it wouldn't be obvious that I was moving somewhere. Not like I was trying to hide it, but just like that I could create consistency. Go ahead, Leland, and then Ken.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad it was brought up because as you all know, when I came here back at the beginning of last year, I had crap behind me, and then there it goes.
Yeah,
there it goes.
Yeah.
So that's Zoom.
That's interesting. There's some
running
people that
into over here. It just keeps stopping.
Yeah, sorry
just
about that.
Crash.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Sorry about that, Ken.
Oh,
yeah.
Nope. 3 in a row. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, someone who used to regularly change the background.
More than anybody else ever.
Yes. This is my very quick setup so that I can
right.
I don't have time, but I like you have my shelving system and I think it does because yeah, as you said, Jim's look is gorgeous. It really is, and yeah, having something which shows a bit of personality behind depends on the meeting again, but yeah, that's what I want to get back to.
And I like what Jim's doing, what Victor's doing. Those are those kind of nice soft bokeh behind it with that you can see who they are, but it's out of focus and not something that's distracting. I think that is really fun. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Nigel.
Yeah, for my setup, essentially it's what for me would be the least amount of friction because usually in the evening when I get home, I probably have 10-15 minutes to set all this up. Well, at least my laptop, my camera, and all that. So what I could set up very quickly is what I have here.
More sandpaper, Mickey.
Yeah.
Nigel and then Ant.
Yeah, for me, I'm using a spare bedroom, and I don't particularly like looking at other people's spare bedrooms. So this backdrop eliminates that. But the other thing is I'm still at the bottom of the learning curve with you guys trying to get up. So I want the minimum amount of things that I need to change so I can learn what each different change is making. And so I found when I had a background, there were just too many variables for me to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I pretty much agree with the previous two. Is basically just keeping it simple and frictionless. Is you want to be able to get in there and just basically hit a button and sit down and be ready to go. There's nothing worse than rushing to get to your meeting and you're all stressed out when you come on camera because you're running behind.
And I found that, like, for me, the green screen was like, oh, something would get changed or I had to move something or whatever, and suddenly it just didn't work as well. And so I was just like, I'm just going to get something that I can put back there that I don't have to think about. Go ahead, Leo.
As Edna said, no capes. I would say no green screens. I really don't like green screens.
When you can crush it, I think it looks okay, but you really have to crush it. Like you can't do it kind of well. You really have to make it look amazing to do that. Go ahead, Leland, real quick, and then we'll move on.
I think I have it now. Yeah, my big point was just to be, as we evolve, I think that single color behind is going to make this broadcast look beautiful. And I'm considering taking all of this physical set apart again just to get that book hair look, or whichever filtered color that we decide. I think it'd be a beautiful set.
I will say that I actually there's been a couple days where half of the panelists are in front of some different color, so it's not all the same color. It's just, but it's a blank background with just they're all gray screens with some kind of color wash or whatever, and I'm like, wow, if we were all looking that way, that would be amazing. So I agree with that, but I'm not pushing that yet. All right, next question.
Sky Gleason here in the panel from Seattle says, hello, Office Hours Brain Trust. Does Discord add compression to a graphics or photo file when you send a file over Discord? And he also wants to know what the file, is there a file limit for the free version?
Go ahead, Leland.
There is a link on each graphic. When it's uploaded and you open it, look at the lower left, it'll say open original file or image. And then you click on that, then download that, not the one that you see as a preview.
Good, Guy, and then Leo.
Yeah, there is a 8 megabyte file size limit, and I quickly hit this when we first started the Discord. And so Office Hours right now has 3 boosts. So a couple of us went in there and boosted it so that we are now at the 100 megabyte limit. So thank you to those that boosted it to get us so we can upload some videos and files.
Was it Leo? Leo? No. Okay. Next question.
The next question comes from Leo Mindell of London. And is there a StreamYard or Hopin event today? There was a mention in the StreamYard Town Hall on Sunday that there will be a closer integration coming. Any thoughts on what that might be?
I'll drop the link. It is today.
Hopefully it works. that's all they have to do is just not screw it up, and so we'll talk about it tomorrow. Please bring it up tomorrow. Let us know. What time is the actual event?
It's in just over about an hour and a half.
It's
About
today.
2 hours.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
Like so, 9 o'clock or something. I think that there's something else at 9. Is DJI is doing an announcement right now? I think Mavic 2S or something. So hopefully we'll get Ray on tomorrow and we'll talk about that in the first hour. That'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, I think Hopin then it doesn't matter what the content is. If they screw up the delivery, they have like 1 or 2 more before they're toast. Like I'm talking to folks that are just like, wow, if they can't get their own events working, I don't know if that's the platform for me. So they really can't keep screwing this up. So we'll see how it goes. Next question.
Matt Hand of Bend, Oregon is in with the popularity of HDMI for all of the setups these days. Do folks have any popular brands or sources? I'm assuming maybe cables.
I am slowly using lots of the Uni source. They have lots of different ones. They have HDMI to HDMI. They have HDMI to USB-C. They have, a bunch of other ones. I admit that it was kind of one of the suggested ones. I have a thing for braided cables. So I have a lot of braided cables. And so they have braided cables is what got me into it. And they're really solid USB-C to HDMI. Now I'm just kind of buying all of them. Like it's just kind of my kind of go-to for that. Go ahead, Leland.
I just wanted to mention to anyone planning a PC build, keep in mind a lot of the pro video cards that are out there aren't just a bunch of HDMI ports. They're typically display ports with 1 HDMI port coming out for the main display. So plan on having some display port to HDMI cables as well if you're going to build a PC.
Just DisplayPort drives me crazy. I know that it's a better format than HDMI, but it's just that I now have to do a conversion and I have to do a thing. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and it locks a little better into the back of the unit as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of go against what Alex was saying about the braided cables. They look nice, but they're very stiff. And if you're going to have anything that's moving around, they're dangerous because they tend to break off surface-mounted HDMI connectors and equipment. So you only want to do that if you're plugging into a patch panel or something where you don't have any fear of damaging equipment, because those really stiff, high-quality braided HDMI cables can break a camera or anything you're plugging into. So
I don't find them much stiffer than a regular one. Like I don't like the ones, at least the ones I buy.
What I usually do, what I will do is take a very flexible, thin HDMI cable that's about a foot long, and I'll plug that into anything that's going to be manipulated or moved around, like a camera or something, and then plug a female to female, and then plug the high-quality cable into that and do the long run with the braided cable, the high-quality cable, so that protects that braided cable as it runs across the ground and people are stepping on it and things. But then you can still move the camera around without any fear of breaking the connector in the camera.
I have to admit, it's been a couple years since I've had to load in. So and I gotta tell you, I don't miss it at all. Like someone was like, do you miss it? And I was like, no, I don't miss it at all. So I've had to do a couple little builds, but no major load-ins for a long time, and or at least that I have to manage. And usually when we're doing that, we're dealing with fiber. Like when I'm on the shows that I do load in, or somebody loads in when I show up, it's mostly been fiber. Go ahead, Rupert, and then Jeffrey.
I would just say you do want to find your reliable sources, but don't always associate price with quality. Stay away from the overpriced consumer retail blister pack stuff. It's highly priced and not always worth it. Go for quality professional stuff.
To its defense, Monster cables are really nice. They're just incredibly overpriced. But they're not bad cables. But to your point, there are a lot of them on Best Buy that are not worth buying, especially Best Buys, like hidden brands, are not good. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
To Courtney's point on the braided cables, there are some braided cables that that are kind of more like cloth, and some that are maybe like a recycled plastic or something like that. Those are very, very stiff cables. I've been also testing some fiber cables, which have been doing a pretty decent job in over 50 feet 4K, which is really exciting. Of course, they don't talk back and forth too much, but the different brands, I don't have a specific brand to suggest for any of those.
Yep. Next question.
Charles Klein in New York City is in next and here in the panel, of course. For dual in-ear monitors, how much of the room do you need to hear? I'm testing the Shure Aonic 4, and the sound is full, but I don't hear any of my surroundings.
I don't. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think Alex was about to say the same thing. If it's supposed to be in ears and you're sealed out, you should hear very little of your surroundings.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't want to hear any of my surroundings. If I put in ear in, anything extra is annoying. In fact, sometimes I'm putting aircraft headphones over top of the in ear to like completely, because that'll drop 30 dB, and then the in ears take over, to make sure that I can only listen to that. And I just do that sometimes to listen to music. so I don't appreciate any exterior when I'm listening to it. Go ahead, JJ, and then Mickey.
If you're afraid of someone sneaking up on you, having the these monitors that are they're
JJ worries about this a lot.
Bone conduction. Yeah. I do.
Yeah. We just mostly, we only had to see, I grew up in a family of 6, and we only had to see someone shuffling along the carpet to know that they might sneak up on you and zap you. That was the biggest concern that we had. Mickey, and then Bill.
Yeah, in a lot of circumstances, I specifically switch to in-ears from normal cans if I need more isolation.
Yep. Go ahead, Bill, and then Courtney.
For production, this is a perfect set of solutions. If you're doing outdoor shooting, never do this. You'd never want to cut yourself off from the environment, particularly if you're shooting, because I've had people back into traffic and things like that just because they couldn't hear environmental sound. So you have to ameliorate it if you're out in the real world.
Go ahead, Courtney.
And if you're on set, in-ear headphones, or even headphones that cover both ears, people come up to you and start talking to you all the time, and you don't know it because your ears are 40 feet away from you. And and a lot of times you'll have to hear cues that aren't coming in over the microphone, like an AD calling action, things like that. So you want to be able to have one ear that you can remove so that you can hear what's going on around you if you're in a production environment that involves cues.
Go ahead, Nigel. By the way, I know one production person he actually had a lav hooked to his mixer, and he'd have it potted up. It wasn't in his record, and he'd have it potted up, and then right before the shot, right when they said action, you'd see him just go whoop, and he'd just turn it off, and then he was only listening to that, but he could hear everything around him because he was really into the isolation, because he wanted to hear every little detail that was there. And so the easiest way for him to do that was to have a little lav. It was like taped to his little kit, like his little trolley, and it would, and it would just. And I asked him what the lav was for. I was like, "Are you trying to get environmental sounds?" He's like, "No, I'm just trying to hear the cues." Like that. Just that one's just for me. So it was a cool little approach to that. Nigel.
I was going to buy the Bumble one, which I'm using a variation, but somebody very kindly on Mukana pointed out that N-Ear, which is the same brand, is about $100 less, and they deliver it in about 3 days, whereas Bumble always seems to be out of stock.
Are they exactly the same? Is it exactly the same one?
I
Mickey?
got the sense.
Oh, well, I got this information from, I believe, John Ilson. He mentioned that it's exactly the same thing.
Seems odd. Anyway, next question.
Leo Mendel of London here in the panel says Silo.do did an interesting event yesterday in Zoom about how Slido can level the communications between the room on an app and the remote. Did anyone watch? Is Mukana able to level the comms for those also in the room?
Yeah, that's what we use it for, that all the time. Yeah, because you just have, everybody has a shared environment. So you have a shared environment where they can all chat, and it doesn't matter what room they're in. So they can still. The interesting thing is that currently you might want to use the chat in the room for the people in the room, and then you have an overall chat that they can get to via Mukana. Eventually, we're going to probably separate that out so that you could be in rooms and you could chat in both at the same time if you wanted to. But we don't need it yet. So, Leo.
I think the key, and Jeffrey's showing it on there, is that they were talking about meetings, and rather than events. But when you suddenly think about it, I mean, I remember Slido, the first time I came across it was 2 or 3 years ago in conferences for people in the room. There was no remote at all, but it was a really, really good way of getting people to do the right questions. And I think when you suddenly think about where we're going forward on hybrid, or we're talking about education and being able to ensure that everybody who is actually watching it is getting the same level of continuity, it was quite an interesting thing, and that's why I'm also asking about it from Mukana.
Yeah, the very first use of Mukana was actually all in room. So it was, a version ahead of it, 4 versions ahead of it in 2008 was in the room, and we used it, and the World Bank was participating in it. And within a year, they stopped using mics in the room, after they did that. And mostly because they just went into development of we have to stop you. Like as soon as they saw what was possible, mics in the room once you have used a comment management system in a room a couple times, you will never open mics in the room again for the audience, ever. Like in an event, people will tell you, but what about that magical moment? Yeah, for every one of those magical moments, you have 100 people pontificating for no reason, just like spouting out stuff that you don't need, and then asking a question that no one cares about, and you don't even know when or how they're going to get to that question. And so it's not worth it. It's just not, like for that one moment, it's not worth it. And so what happens is when you have the audience in the room able to ask questions, vote those questions up, and with Mukana or Slido or whatever, you can merge the online audience with the in-room audience so that they're all asking the same questions and the same, they're all interacting together. When you pull all that together, you end up with something that's much better than anything that was in the room before. And so, I mean, we're really getting to the point, with what's possible. Again, we've tripped over it. We were forced into it. No one was ready for what happened, and everything's happening. But the online tools are going to pass in-room experiences in the next year, where you can have the user has more control, the brand has more control, there's more interactivity, there's more engagement than anything that's possible in the real world. Like we're barreling down that. I know people have a hard time believing that, but we are barreling down that road. And when that passes it doesn't mean that physical events will go away or hybrid events or all these other things. It just means that they're going to be radio to TV. TV circa now versus radio is a much, the value proposition is very different. It doesn't mean that radio went away. It just means that we don't pay much attention to it. Go ahead, Leo.
I think what you actually see when I use Slido as well is it shows you the weakness of social media posting. And when you've got social media interaction, which you think at the beginning is really good, and you can ask certain questions, it's like, where you're watching from? Yes, that's great. But then you start realizing that you are just getting unfiltered comments, and you're trying to find the actual quality, and nobody's actually writing you quality. When you use something like Mukana or Slido, where you've actually got people are actually having to think about their question, because they know that other people watching will vote on the
voting
value of their question. You take away the voting, you probably will take away 25 to 50% of the quality of the question, because people will just put in really one. Yeah,
I get a lot of feedback about the voting. Like the people don't like it. And I'm just like, it's what makes it work. Like it's the secret. The actual downvote is the secret. The downvote of give people the opportunity and the threat of it going down when you don't properly form it or think about the whole audience, because it's a big audience. We're all watching. So you're absolutely right. And so these are both of us are going down the same path. Mukana has some other features that we haven't unrolled that are a little different than Slido. So next question.
Brian Carpenter of Cleveland, Ohio says, beyond work from home, the best use of our Zoom kit has been my wife reading bedtime stories to their remote grandchildren. Could the panelists demonstrate examples of just how easy high-quality story time could be if only Grandpa bought, and then fill in the blank with your favorite gear?
I would get an ATEM, of course, to do the bedtime stories. Because an ATEM is what everybody needs for bedtime. If you're going to once you have the ATEM and the 6K camera with a nice short depth of field, now what you want to do is you want an iPad that goes into your switcher, and then you read the bedtime stories from iBooks, as opposed to it where you can now cut to it. So when you cut to the pictures and then cut back, and you could just kind of tap it, like, let me show you the picture, and then we'll read some more, and then let me show you the thing. So then that would be how I would do it. Go ahead, Bill, and then Ken, and then Mickey.
So when my son Mike was a little boy, he was probably in second or third grade, I was the volunteer dad to go in and read a story into the classroom. I had one of the best experiences in my entire life. I was reading a book called Miss Spider's Tea Party to the class, and I noticed that each chapter started with a different number. So I said, kids, before we start, there's a hidden secret in this. And then every chapter I would get to 2, and the entire class would gasp. And so it was just such a strengthening of the idea that reading to kids is so powerful in helping them do something like form just a basic concept of numbers. And on top of that,
what would you do technically?
The intimacy of good quality audio.
What would you do technically?
I'm
going to tie you into it. Okay,
good microphone, good the rest of that. The good quality audio brings that alive for people in a way that bad audio and bad quality does not. So the investment in these tools is important.
Mike would be good. Yeah, Ken, and then Charles.
Yeah, but well, I did a thing with my family. My mum's back in the West Indies and some cousins and stuff, where I did a 35mm slideshow with Zoom, using the 6K camera to focus in on that.
Yep.
And being able to do the storytelling of these are 40-year-old slides, that being able to do that using the tech with Zoom and the storytelling, that worked really well.
Charles,
present those. Sorry, did you
okay,
project them on
don't interrupt. We're way behind. Like, I'm just trying to move through the questions. That's why I'm cutting people off. So for the panelists, you got to get to the point really fast. We are behind. Our producers have gotten very good, and we're not as good as we need to be. Like, we need to that's why I'm going to cut you off if you're not answering the question directly. Just warning you ahead of time that I'm just literally going to step into you if you don't answer the question to what was asked. Go ahead, Charles, and then Guy.
I will get a Jalapeno 40, get a noise assist, and hire Courtney to read the whole story.
but you can mouth it. You just gotta put you got anyway. Go ahead, Guy, and then Courtney.
Yeah, Facebook portal, $299, 15-inch screen, makes it way bigger. Plus, they have a Storytime app that puts their face inside of it, so lots of fun for kids. I have lots of kids and grandkids, and they love this.
Courtney.
Yeah, I have a mixer so that besides a high-quality microphone, you could mix in a little mood music or something fantastical to go along with the voiceover story, because that adds a lot to story.
There's a variety of tools that will do audio cues. So if you really practice it, you really could get to a point where you tap on a little Stream Deck, let's say. I mean, you didn't ask us like how to do it for $10. You have a little Stream Deck and you can have it firing off so that when you get to different pages, you are firing off like the lightning, and then you sit there talking, and you can really, now I really want to do this for my nephews. All right, I got to think about this. All right, next question.
Keenan Campbell, Princeton, Illinois. After the MixPre session, I learned a ton. Can Mickey and the panel talk about the sweet spot between the gain and level settings?
Mickey?
Right. Just first things first. There are two on the MixPres. There are 2 meters there. It's a combination meter. It's a peak plus VU meter. The VU meter is the lower one that moves quicker, and that's sort of an average of the levels. And then the peak is what appears to be louder, and that is that moves a little slower. On your ISO channels, the individual audio channels that you have there, you'd want to set that up so that the peak is as loud as it can be without it touching the limiters. So you have to see where your dynamic range ends up. And on the mix level, which you control with your actual physical fader as opposed to the gain that is in the menu, you set that fader up to a level that meets the spec that you're mixing to.
It's perfect. Next question.
Ken Jordan in Surrey, UK says, "Hi, Alex. Can you demonstrate again the split screen wipe you did with Victor in the pre-show?"
Yeah. So let's see if I click to here. So here's my what I'm looking for is you're going to look for palettes. That's what you want to do first there, and then in palettes you'll see transitions. And so you'll see if I click on this, now it's actually hard for me to interact the way I have this set up. No, I don't. All right, so transitions will normally be closed. So if I turn all these things off, let's see here. Let me get rid of my little thing there. So if all of these are shut, you'll see right here is transition. And in transition, you'll go over to, you're looking for wipe, right there. And I'm using this one at the moment. It's kind of nice, but these two are also popular for those kind of splits. So when I'm doing it, I'll show in the future how to do kind of a square transition, like this, where you actually cut a Dumont chart out. But right now you can do it just with any of these. And then the key is that once you do that, you're probably going to be set on mix, but you want wipe. And so you turn it on to wipe. And then as you grab, then you're just going to grab this guy here. And so we'll just pull it up and you'll see, oh, I'm on the same right now. This is the way the switcher works. So if I have myself on preview, as I move it up, you'll see that. So, and what we're trying to do when I do that is I'm trying to compare, obviously this isn't going to match, but I'm trying to pick, if you're matching a camera, you're matching this color to this color. And the fact that you have a hard line, the other thing to remember is that you'll see softness down here. It's usually set somewhere higher and you don't want to, you want to move it over, you want to move it all the way to 0. And then what you're going to see is you're just looking for the difference in that line. And what a lot of times we do is, again, run this across. I'll talk about it in the future of running it across, running it through colors so that you can split colors. So if you had colors going across here, imagine all these being different colors. What you want to do is split along through them. And then one camera's on the top and the other camera's on the bottom. And that's going to let you just match the colors and the cameras will match. Now I use a Dumont chart, which looks like this. And what I do is I open the square so that it cuts the cameras like this all the way through the colors. And then again, I just match them on either side. Once the line disappears, then you have cameras that are matched. And that's a way to visually do it without it being a big technical thing. But it's hard to do with the X-Rights, but you could print anything you wanted to do that. The colors don't have to be a specific color. They just have to be relatively covering the entire range of colors to work with. You could probably take a color chart and literally eyedropper each color and then run it across if you just want to cheat on what colors you should use, and then print them out, and it would work well. And that's Benjamin's idea that he came up with that. Go ahead, Alex, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Of course, you could take a picture of a color chart and make 2 copies of it, and then both those printouts would match each other, and then put them in front of each of the cameras. I'm just
but what I would do is you could. Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting to have 2 identical charts that you were trying to match. Although sometimes they're not. It's just easier. We put the cameras right next to each other so that we just know that they're both looking at the same thing. Because if those 2 cameras are in some different place, you don't know whether they're getting the same light. So you probably want them to share the same light. And we put both cameras right next to each other, 10 feet from the chart, and we do it one by one, and they all match to one camera. And so we just do it very methodically, and it takes a couple hours to do. Like 6 cameras will take 3 or 4 hours to get just right. But once they're done, they're done. You can put them back in the box and they'll all look the same. They just have to have the same lenses on them. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a couple weeks. Next question.
James Babbitt of San Diego says, "Hi, Alex. What actually happens when you transfer the con to and from Mickey every morning?"
I give Mickey the host. So I need to be host to start the YouTube stream currently. And then once I do that, then I hand it to Mickey so he can edit the show. So that's but I need to do that first. And it's a vestige of the fact that it's the fact that we're streaming from Zoom, which we won't do for much longer. No, we've been testing it without that. I've been quietly testing it in the background. And there's a bunch of, I keep on going, oh, right, I didn't think of that. Oh, right, I didn't think of that. So there's a whole bunch of me learning things that I don't, so I don't want to break what's working, even if it's not working great, but I'll eventually move it to live streaming. Go ahead, Leo.
Just very quickly, Zoom made a change a short time ago, and that you have to be logged into the website to start live streaming. You didn't used to have to be, so you could have set it up and leave it alone. But they made a change, and it catches a lot of people out where they've done all the settings before, press go, and it goes to the website, and it then locks dead, and you're just sitting there and you can't get the show going.
And I'm always logged in, so that's why it works for me. The only challenge I get into is I have like 20 accounts on Zoom, so I'm jumping from one to another. I have to pay attention to what I'm doing. Next question.
Michael Marsh of San Anselmo, California is up next with, what is the appropriate percentage of equipment expense to maintain an existing business?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for us, we typically budget 5 to 10% of the original purchase price per year for maintenance and refurbishing.
Yeah, but I think it's to maintain an existing business. So your overall, I think it would be, the way I always thought about it is the budget that I had. We were, if we're charging for our equipment. Now, it's a little different. I know works a little differently because we both are making investments in the future and what we're doing for clients and so on and so forth. As I did it ad hoc and built up my stuff, basically I was renting back equipment, or at least budgeting for that for every show. In my world, I had 1/3 of what I rented back was a budget. Like, so if I had, like, I had some where my rental budget was $200,000 for one show. And so I had 1/3 of that to buy things. So I, 1/3 of that was just like literally. And so you'd always see these big shows that would go through Pixelcore, and you just see this huge chunk. And that's how we paid. We paid for a whole eclipse that way. And so, so these huge purchases would happen around big shows. The reason I did that was I just wouldn't get over my skis. Like I was always like, I'm never going to spend more than that. We would just deal with and we'd rent everything else outside of that, that we couldn't do it. And that way we stayed in. And admittedly, the one time I did jump way past that to try to move from one level of production to another is when the market changed, and then I didn't have a company anymore. So I probably should have stuck with it. Go ahead, JJ and Mickey.
Michael, you're here in town, so if you have an actual use case scenario, reach out in Discord.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. Sorry, I understood the question incorrectly earlier, but now, with if we are able to first pay for the the acquisition cost of the gear with at least 50% of that project's budget, and if we can recoup the entire budget within a span of 12 months, then we will purchase instead of sub-renting.
Perfect. Next question.
Carl Marxer in New York says, where does Courtney Goodin get his thin, flexible HDMI cables? I have trouble finding a good source.
Courtney?
I did get them at mono price for a while, and then they disappeared. I bought them from a number of other sources. You do have to be careful because they're a little more fragile than, the cable is more fragile than the thicker cable. So you have to weigh the cost of the cable versus the cost of replacing the connector on a piece of gear. So I would always sacrifice the cable over the gear. So that's why I use the thinner cables, although they're not as robust. And I think Monoprice has them. There's a brand called Red Mirror. They're unidirectional cables because they have amplifiers or equalizers into the connectors on the ends of the cables. That way they can go with a skinnier cable, and it has an equalizer built into the end for longer runs, so that the impedance is correct over a long run of cable. But you got to put them in one direction only.
Go ahead, Leo, real quick.
The ones that I used are called Slim HDMI from Amazon. I found those to be really useful. They're really small and they just seem to work. They're called Slim HDMI.
Next question.
Ruben Marchena of Grand Rapids, Michigan says, I have two PTZ Optics cameras. Same model, the only difference is that one is 2 years old and the other is 1 month old. Do the sensors degrade with age? Colors don't match and the new one is crispier and sharper.
Go ahead, Bill.
The whole industry has changed to just-in-time production, so you're going to get, 3 years ago, the chips that were able to be produced in that environment. As those factories refresh their equipment, the new ones coming out, and people don't stock inventory like they used to. That was an old thing, and it doesn't happen much anymore.
Go ahead, Charles, and then Jeffrey.
So two main things. If the processing that is managing the color on both, it's different. It doesn't matter if it's the same chip or not, it's going to look different. Also, over time, the chip will degrade a little bit. And even when you're using two brand new cameras, like an Ari, it's the same camera, brand new, we still have to match those two because they will be slightly different. So,
yeah, make sure that the firmware is the same between the two cameras. One a couple years old, you may want to update the firmware. You may be they may have improved it, and you'll get it with the new one, and you won't have it with the old one. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
There was one point in time where PTZ Optics actually changed their sensor. They're running the Panasonic 2.7-inch sensor right now, but you might have had the old sensor. And the other thing with the firmware update, if it has NDI added to that, that can also make the effect if the other one doesn't.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And this actually goes back to the answer I erroneously gave 2 questions ago. This is a good reason why to routinely maintain your cameras, because a lot of these camera manufacturers will recalibrate your sensors to spec when it's sent back to the mothership.
Next question. We're going to start moving pretty fast.
Todd Reynolds in North Adams, Massachusetts. Guy Cochran's ability to zoom and nav so seamlessly as he screen shares is inspiring. He hopes it's not too simplistic a question or something I've been missing, but how do you do that, Guy?
Go ahead, Guy.
So it's pretty easy. If I press this button right here, you see it's just a Stream Deck, and that's how I'm cutting. So I'm pressing that button there, and then on my lap right here, I'm able to zoom in with the iPad Pro. So I'm just cutting to the iPad Pro with the Stream Deck. That's it.
That's awesome. Next question.
Jim Hankers of Chesterfield, Michigan says, what are some crazy examples of distractions you had to endure while live streaming?
Rupert?
I was on a corporate location one time and we had a bomb threat. And that was a real big distraction for the 2 or 3 minutes it worked out to actually establish what was happening until somebody made the decision to evacuate. But that 2 or 3 minutes was a big distraction for everybody. So I would say like all kinds of rumor type situations are big distractions. You want to deal with facts.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, in actual fact, on this very show on Monday, I had the displeasure of being stung multiple times in my calf by a yellow jacket that managed to crawl up the inside of my pant leg. I leveraged the fade to black button and I had a stern conversation with that insect.
Probably a lethal conversation. Go ahead, Mickey, and then John.
Not exactly crazy, but it's a constant thing that sound mixers get asked if, hey, may I charge my phone on your cart?
Oh, yeah. That's constant. Go ahead, John.
Please inform your spouse that you're live broadcasting. I can't tell you how many naked spouses I've seen in the background.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sky.
Rain. I'm just saying, we had a lot of rain in our live feed a week ago, and the water that gathers up in the canopies could be bad. Just saying.
Yeah, we had some UPSs catch fire. We've had a couple fires. Those are stressful, and we had an active shooter at one of ours that we had to manage. And of course, I went out. My wife was asking me, "There's an active shooter where you are," and I said, "I know. I'm looking for him." And she was like, "Why are you looking for him?" I was like, "Because he's messing up my live stream. Like, I need to go find him. Like, I need to figure out what's going on here." So he's like, I was like, "I need to get this. We need to close this up." So anyway, it turned out fine. He was captured. Bill and then Courtney.
Very much more minor, but if you have window coverings and you're working in daylight and you do not affix them really well, there's nothing worse during a live stream than having a window covering fall off and suddenly your exposure goes to heck and you can't really fix it because you're live.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, capitalizing on the rain idea that Sky brought up, we were shooting a Willie Nelson 4th of July picnic, and it started raining really hard, and they had a tarp covering the stage, and water started gathering and threatening to bring down the entire superstructure of the stage, and so the drummer for Willie Nelson brings out a .45 and shoots about 15 holes in the thing to drain the water. So it was an active shooter and rain.
Yeah, we had... I guess the biggest one was I was in Battambang, Cambodia, and we had 20,000 people that had with no seating, just in a big field where there were cows earlier that day, and it was lightning. Lightning got pretty close. It didn't get close enough to do it, but it was then high winds, and so it's probably the biggest distraction from what we were doing because we were afraid that it was going to be Altamont. Next question.
Leo Mendel, London, UK, says bone conduction headphones, good or bad?
JJ likes them. Jeffrey, real quick.
So a couple weeks ago, I was actually on the show and I tested out the Hopin from iShocks. They've been around forever. When it came to bone conductor microphone, of course, not broadcast quality, but the idea is if you can get it around your bones to actually hear what's going on, it does a decent job in hearing things, and you can hear things. It's not blocking the ear.
Next question.
Roman Kuryak of Kyiv, Ukraine says, what locking buckle tie-down straps do you recommend for cable setup purposes and cable tying? And he's talking about polyester ties, not the ratchet straps.
Locking buckle tie-downs. I don't know if I have little ones. I mean, when I think of locking buckles, I think of tie-down. When I think of tie-downs, at least in America, we're thinking about like tying down crates, which I can get into a long discussion about which ones I like about that. But I don't know. Go ahead, Courtney. I can't see it. Can't hear you. I'm sorry. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I got muted on the way up. I printed one of these and I just stick it with one of these command strips to a cabinet, and then this is for cables that sorry, I got this unmute myself thing in the middle of my screen. This just pops open and you pull the cable off.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's
and then you
so simple.
Once
it's so simple and so easy.
But I did snap it up. But I would snap it back on. But then this sits on the side of a case or whatever, and you pop it off, you bring the cable out, and then you wrap the cable back up, put it up, and snap it back together again. But you can,
and it works every time you're not on air.
Well, you're normally not dragging it out, holding it up in your hand and pulling the cable off.
Exactly. Go ahead, JJ.
So for cable tying in my Jeep, I have little tie downs that they have a little piece of wire inside, so they're stiff and you can twist them real quick, and it makes they're covered in nylon, very simple. But generally,
that's a lot of us use those. Yeah, those are you can buy huge wraps of them. Next question.
Leo Mendel, UK, London. I have the MEE M6 in-ears for monitoring. They have an option for custom fit silicone ear tips for around $150. Are they worth it?
Go ahead, Mickey.
I would probably what do you call this? Do custom molded in-ears for higher end in-ears as opposed to something that is I think the M6 is only $20 or $30. So I'd probably step it up first before getting anything custom, because $20 in-ear with a $150 mold, it doesn't really make sense at that price range.
Yep. Next question.
Frederick Eckert of Bad Herrenham in Germany says some products from Crestron or Extron cannot be upgraded or configured without employing and paying a certified partner. For little things, it's just a pain not to be able to have the option to do it yourself. Before investing in a BSS Blue 806, I wonder how the company BSS audio is behaving in that matter?
I mean, our experience so far, we have the 806, and we've seen it used in a couple different facilities. That's what kind of sold me on it, was listening to Tucker talk about it, and then seeing it in action was mind-blowing. For me, it was just, as soon as I saw it, I was at a surround stage and was able to watch them change from IMAX to 7.1 to 5.14, whatever they wanted, just pushing a button, and the BSS was rerouting everything. But when we opened it up, it really is, when you look at the interface, it's an open-ended, you're not really, I mean, you might have to send it in to have, if something's wrong with it, but it's really designed as a open-ended tool that you just design and build. And you can actually it has tools to even build interfaces that tie into jumping from one behavior to another. So I don't think that, I do agree with you that Crestron is something that you really need somebody to to work on with you. It's a thing. But even then, if you have technical people, you can put it together. But the 806 is expensive, but it's very wide open as far as what you can get done with it. Go ahead, John, real quick.
I know Nigel he's a Crestron dealer. We had Crestron system. We're all developers, and they use .NET architecture. So it was very simple for us to go in and make code changes.
Yeah, and I know that Stanford, when Bob Smith was here talking, showing what Stanford's doing, they're doing all that customization themselves. They're not having somebody come in and do it. So it's just a matter of having somebody that knows how to do it. But what I will say with the 806 is that it's not coding. It's just noodles. You're moving around to make it work. Next question.
Michael Marsh of San Anselmo, California says the speed round at the end of the first hour doesn't offer much more than single answers. More time is spent telling panelists to keep it quick. Couldn't the lower rated questions remaining be answered by panelists on Mukana? Maybe invite listeners to go there or ask again tomorrow.
Go ahead, Rupert.
Maybe those listeners could be invited to the post show and get an answer there.
Yeah, I mean, right now in the current size that we're at, I'm still engaged. We still have a lot of slack to pull up as panelists. So before we get into worrying about that, the reason that we're getting into the rush is because I'm not managing the time well, and so you're seeing me start to tighten the screw a little bit on everybody, that we cannot, like as hosts, we can spend plenty of time on things, but we have to continually, stay focused on the answers when we have a lot of questions. And so we're still learning how to do that. So I'm not worried about it yet, because we're still running out of time at the end, because we're still talking too much on some of them. Like we want to be familial, but we also want to, be to the point and tighten that up a little bit. So you're going to see me get rougher as we go about it. And I've been kind of warning people that we need to go faster, but now I'm just going to step into answers. So like people just need to know that that's what's coming. Like I'll just cut to the chase with it, because it's my job to keep moving forward. So I'm just warning all the panelists that it will get rougher. Like I'm going to get rougher about it. You really need to think about what how you're approaching that, and think about, like, when we have a lot of questions. You'll see me let things run really long when we don't have a lot of questions left. Like right now I'm talking a little extra because I think I have time, but you just have to kind of keep that in mind as you go through it. And that's for the panelists. I still feel like it's worth us answering every question. You can ask it again if you don't feel like you got the answer that you wanted. Just ask it again tomorrow with slightly different, pieces. The other side of it is the responsibility of our producers who are watching to vote those questions up. So vote, when you ask questions at the beginning, when you vote the questions up, we get them at the front end of the hour, and we spend the most time on the first 5 questions is going to be 20% of the show. Like that's just the way it's built. So the reason that we're spending so little time on the ones at the end oftentimes is they have, 1 vote or 0 votes or 2 votes. So I don't feel like we're just kind of trying to make no question left behind. But that's kind of so it's both I think about this a lot, actually, if you haven't noticed. And I think about, it's a responsibility of the panelists to be more direct when we have lots of questions. And it's a responsibility of the producers to vote on the questions and ask them early. So when I ask for them at 7:40, it's a responsibility of the producers to ask them. And then and to vote on them, and so that we know what you mostly want to see of all those things that are there. And so the ones at the end are 1 vote, 0 vote, 2 votes, and we're just buzzing through them to make sure we give you some answers so that you left with that value. So that's kind of my thought process around it. Courtney and then JJ real quick.
And he does have a correct idea. And a lot of times, if when Alex is putting the screws to us, we're approaching the top of the hour. If I get cut off or something and I had a good answer, I will always go into Mukana and post it as a reply to that question. And I urge also the participants who are not members of the panel, if they have a good idea that wasn't brought up in the response, to also post that in Mukana, because that way gets the answer out.
The goal is that there's no reason we happen to be the ones with the video and we're talking, but there's no reason why you can't answer all those questions or refer back to those questions in the chat and talk amongst yourselves and post stuff there. So we're bringing them up at a certain time and bringing them up over video, but it is something that the goal is to have that. Now, as we grow, when we have 800 concurrent, 1,000 concurrent here, we will not be able to get to all the answers, and then the voting. We just won't, we're going to try to do it to a certain level. And then we're going to let you know that some of these are going to fall off because we're not going to be able to do that. And so and then it becomes more incumbent on the producers watching the show to vote on those questions to decide which ones we're covering that hour. So all of this stuff is a progression. Go ahead, JJ, real quick. And we'll go into the last question.
Kind reminder, please do not copy and paste. And it may be due to my novelty to this team. But if a lot of those stated rules were someplace for the Mukana folks, that also would be helpful.
We don't have people wandering off the Mukana stuff very often. I get pretty rough about that. Also remember that you can ask those. We don't get much cut and paste though, so that hasn't happened for a while. At least they're hiding it well. Remember that the notes has a place where you can ask questions. You can put the questions in for the next day. So as you're working, just leave that little window open, and you can type in questions that you may want to ask the next day, and then pump them in during the right at the very beginning. But the best time to ask questions and vote on them is between 7:43 and 8 o'clock, 6:43 and 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Like that's the time to put the questions in. Next question.
The last one we have in the regular section today is lighting from Michael Marsh, San Anselmo, California. Lighting recommendation, please. Looking for a key light for Zoom use that is home office friendly. Adjustable color temperature, LED, lots of white in the room. A torchère, maybe?
Go ahead, real quick. Ken, Ant, Alex, and Bill. Just the answer.
Aperture B7C is very adjustable.
Go ahead, Ant.
Dasny D50 key light.
Alex?
A $70 ring light, 14, 15 inches, 20 inches does this.
Bill?
Ring lights are good, but if you want to have something that's off to the side rather than directly in front of your face, I use these. They're $38 a piece, and I have 2 of them mounted on arms.
I am a huge fan of the Nanlite 100Bs and 68Bs, depending on the price. They're amazing little lights for the price. Mickey?
On the lower end of Nanlights, LumiPad 25 and LumiPad 11, and also the little Pavo tubes.
And Guy makes his own. He can't just buy them from somebody else.
Those are great.
I have to.
Yeah.
This is the Prismatic Spectra 18 that's RGB. And I mean, if you can get this thing positioned in the right spot, not through, that's the classic look, but.
Yep. It's the best ring light out there. So it's definitely worth checking out. Next question.
Well,
now we're switching gears. So we are now shifting gears. Daria has returned, and so we're all here together. And
hey guys.
Hey there. So what we're going to do is shift. Unfortunately, Liberty has a show. I was expecting, I was hoping to have Liberty on here, but we're going to talk about social. And the idea is just really how we use these different social platforms. We talked a little bit about how we use them inside of a live show, but I think it's probably worth a discussion of how we use the social platforms all, as a whole. If anyone has any opening things about how before we jump into the questions, you can keep on asking questions here. But why don't we talk a little bit? If anyone has ways that they do this, go ahead and raise your hand. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, are you talking about for our own personal social brands or for events?
Yeah,
or
for brands.
anything?
For how do you recommend it to brands, and how do you use it yourself? What do you like? I think just an open conversation about how we approach social media, I think is a reasonably good thing. As it can be promotion for an event, promotion for your personal brand, promotion for brands. How do you kind of approach that?
Well, speaking for myself, I'm much more of Twitter of anything else, and I built up 6,000 followers. It's taken a few years. I'm just tweeting a few times a day and stuff like that. And my main policy is not to use my direct name, but use a brand, which is Alex4D, which is close to who I am, but not completely who I am. So sometimes it's good to create a brand that is you, but it's just you when you're being an expert on a certain thing, and maybe a more positive, more open-minded person. So it helps you be a slightly different person when you're doing that brand, both then initially something like on Twitter, and then you'd actually create a page and do that on Facebook, and essentially using Facebook-like a Facebook page like your Twitter feed, but with more detail. And then that can also does the Instagram. So I think what you need to do is understand the culture of each of the different platforms, and then work out how content can then flow from one platform to another, and how to modify it so it works. Even to the extent of Instagram, if you see a whole lot of recent posts, they have the columns, there's always in columns of 3, so you can create checkerboard patterns if you look at recent posts, and create posts that actually work when they're stuck together. And then from those main ones, then you have LinkedIn if you want to get more technically on the technical professional side, and you want to own an area of expertise. And that's what I say to anybody. Find some area of expertise that you feel that you can not necessarily completely be the only person on the planet that owns, but if you're one of the 20 people who talk about it in a useful way, that's really good. And then you can be one of the references for that sort of thing. Anyway, I got lots more to say, but I should leave it to other people too.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, one of my key first points is to you choose a social channel based on the kind of audience, but the key thing is that you own that content by, I always recommend it, building your own website where you have that, and then from there is where you can then feed out. So that what you want to do is to get from that social channel into your space, and then you can wall garden them by how you promote, and not then be beholden to whatever flavor the social channel might change to. And if your content is only there, then you kind of get stuck. So I would always say own it, and then feed from your own space where you're going to go to on those social channels.
Yep. Go ahead, Leland, and then John.
Going to piggyback off of what was just said, and I'm going to kind of show some quick examples of how I've built out my, call it social empire. I started with a website known as BCB Live, and from there I opened social channels using the name that I'm going to use as a brand. And in my case, I use Best Conceptions Broadcasting, but I also run several other pages for brands that may be businesses that I run or other broadcasts that I do for people. Carry that brand across every channel, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, whoops, I went too many far there. Twitter would be another. Make sure that branding matches so that people can recognize you across all channels. They're not just looking for you on Twitter as @LelandBest, but they're looking for everything else that you do. And get out on those social channels and grab those handles. If you want your name, you better get it quick if you have a common name, or at least find a brand that is not taken already.
The one thing that I do very quickly is a new social network means I jump on it immediately and set up my name, and mine's the same. It's just Alex Lindsay. And so the idea is that it's like a YouTube /Alex Lindsay, Twitter Alex Lindsay, Instagram Alex Lindsay, and that takes effort. Like, it's not something you do by accident. That is Clubhouse is Alex Lindsay, because it came out. I turn it on. I do enough events that I build up something on it, and then I figure out how much I'm going to use it. But I don't. But I immediately get it in and build up a capacity on it. John, and then Ant.
So I just checked my my birthdays on both Twitter and Facebook. So 2008 on Twitter, 2006 Facebook. And what's interesting is I didn't find real value on Twitter or Facebook until I built up amount of users. I have 5,000 Facebook maxed out when you could add, and then Twitter I've got like 1,000 or so. But I didn't find real value until I had a preponderance of followers or friends.
And I will say Twitter's gotten much harder to grow in than it used to be. So that's a real challenge. It's a real nug. When I got into it early enough and was on a show, so it made it easier to build it up to where it is now. But it's useful. Twitter's the one I spend the most time on because, to your point, I get the most response. So I spend the most time there. Go ahead, Ant.
Yeah, he hit on exactly what I was thinking. It's not just marketing when you're using social media. You can also try to build a community with it, and that's where you're really going to see the growth. Is know where your folks are and use it as a nice spot to build community.
If you haven't noticed, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm not worried about losing people. I say whatever I'm going to say on Twitter. I look at it as refining my following, and so if I start saying something, I lose. I am careful about what I say on Twitter. It's not like I just say whatever I want. I think a lot of people make the mistake of, I literally didn't get work because of something I said in 2008. Like I couldn't even find the tweet that I had said about somebody. And it was a big political figure. And I said something mean. And so about them, 8 years before, and I was like, how do you even find that? And so, and it was back when Twitter, you were being much more loose. And some people still, when you start on these social media, you think that you can you get excited and you want to just share all these things and quips, and you're trying to be funny, and that's what gets people in trouble. So just be very aware of what you're tweeting, and that it could come back to you in a horrible way. So just know that you do have to be responsible for it. Go ahead, Rupert.
I was just going to introduce into the mix that as well as social media, there's your overall online reputation to consider. If you're managing a brand or an event or a location, that there may also be things like reviews on Google or reviews on Yelp and things, and you can have things breed over there that if you're managing your online presence, you need to go and address those things also.
Yeah, you do want to be responsive. So I try to be as responsive on social media. If I'm going to post somewhere, I know that that's now a responsibility to respond to whoever responded, and not just throw it up there and ignore people. So I do things occasionally. I try not to do if I put something up, it's usually because I thought about it, and I'm not trying to do constant polls or constant, like, what are your top 10, whatever, unless I think about it. And I think, oh, that'd be funny to know what people are like. Like I asked best concerts or whatever. It was because I was thinking about my favorite concerts. It wasn't because I'm trying to build up my following or do something goofy. I was just like, I wonder what people's best concerts were. And I was thinking about like what makes a good concert at the moment. And so, those kinds of things are fun. I do polls, and I'm usually earnestly interested I'm always earnestly interested in it. I think that's the big thing, is that I think a lot of people put up a lot of junk. I think you should take your followers pretty seriously, like in the sense that, they are this greater community that you've built around, that at least you have some part of, and you just don't want to, I think a lot of people fill it with stuff. Spamming it's really hard. Like people will ask me to post something on Twitter, and I'm, at 38,000 followers, I think about it a lot. Like I'm about to put this in front of 38,000 people. And I think really clearly, like, are they going to look at it and go, like 10% off something? I'm like, I'm not going to put that up. Like, like I'm not going to, that's still too close. And I think that people just think, well, it's just another tweet, but it undermines my connection. And so I don't want to go there. I also don't ask people for very much. I do it every once in a while, like, hey, check this out. But and then finally, the only thing I'll say before we jump into the questions, because no one else has their hand up, is I was going to say I lost it. It just ran off. I had another good point, but maybe it'll come back. All right, next question.
Okay, the first one we're dealing with here, James in Dublin, Ireland, has our first 3 questions most highly voted. So the first is collecting donations online. What are the panel's preferred solutions?
Go ahead, Leland.
You have to be very careful there. I'm going to leave a link for the legal risks and considerations for online fundraising that was written by Janice Ryan Esquire from Venerable LLP in May of 2015. Look at that. It's a very in-depth discussion of what you can and cannot do legally on live streams when it comes to funding, auctions, donations, things of that sort. If you're going to go there, go to GoFundMe or Plum Fund or something like that, where you can actually create a legit account for donations, and that way it's representative, or maybe a Facebook donation, although I've heard bad things about those as well.
What have you heard?
that this money doesn't always necessarily go where it's supposed to. Like we see a lot with March of Dimes and things like that as well. Some of those that are built as funds on the system aren't actually real fund systems. So they get money when they shouldn't be.
But I think that that's up to the organization. But the Facebook and YouTube mechanisms are actually super efficient, and we've worked with a lot of clients that have been very happy. Now it takes time to get in. You can't just go, I'm going to set up a fundraiser. You have to be 501c3. You have to go through a process. And there's only a handful of people that can actually execute the event, or at least when we were doing a lot of these. So you have to you have to go through the process, but it's really effective when it works. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, obviously the legal aspects on what you can ask for when donating, again with your own, but that aside, with your own website, forget that those online donation solutions from like YouTube or things, they do take a large percentage. If you build your own, then Stripe takes.
I don't know. Does YouTube take a large percentage? I don't think that they do. I think that I know that I don't think Facebook takes any. Like I think they do it as a community builder. I don't think that they. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about YouTube's as much, but Facebook's I think the take is 0. Because they're just trying to support that. That's part of like goodwill from their perspective. But yeah, if you do it yourself, you just have to really make sure you don't screw it up. Taking people, once you ask for credit cards, you are now in a world of
you never take. That's why you go through something like Stripe,
right? And even then, it's just like once you start taking money directly, just be super like you're now in a different world than just goodwill. Ant.
Buy me a coffee and Stripe. They facilitate a lot of that stuff for you, and you just need to keep up with it for your tax purposes.
Yeah. Next question.
James's second one here from Dublin. Any tips on best practices for creating and posting recurring weekly online events on Facebook to build an audience? At the moment, he posts his events as an individual Facebook event manually, and he wants to know what the pros and cons are of any advised methods.
I would never do anything regularly. I think that's just crazy. You just do it whenever you feel like it. I don't think
every day. What a hassle.
We do everything by hand when we do stuff on YouTube and Facebook. We don't set anything up recurring. I didn't even know that Facebook does. Does Facebook do recurring live streaming events? I think that you always have to build them. One thing that we don't do is we don't build scheduled events on Facebook or YouTube more than a week out. I think they may have even closed that restriction. And the reason that we don't do that often is because we'll do a lot of promotion on different platforms, but we don't do it directly because they will change the platform, and suddenly whatever you set up doesn't work anymore. And it changes. All these platforms change every week, so we're very careful about getting people want to schedule their live event 3 months in advance, and we're like, I wouldn't do that. I would build up PR around it and do things around it to get people to build that out, but I wouldn't put it up early. Go ahead, Leland.
Just as one who's done a lot of social posting, I use this practice quite regularly, but it comes really down to being consistent with your brand again. So let me just give a representation. If I were to go and do a broadcast for a show, I'm going to make my show cards consistent so that every time somebody comes out to see a broadcast we're going to do, they're going to know we're going to be live, and they know it's us. They know it's who we're dealing with. So make sure you go about a week ahead of the broadcast and promote those on your other social channels, like a quick YouTube blurb video or some tweets out as some cutaway video as a promo to the show representing your guest and your speakers, and then come back to that every few days. But don't expect to come out on a live broadcast and put a show card out the day of the broadcast or the day before and expect to get any live viewers. It's just not going to happen.
If you're doing repeated ones, the biggest thing that you have to think about is how you're serving your audience, not what you want to say. A lot of people have a thing about what they want to say, like they want to promote some new product, or they want to promote their service, or they want to talk about how great they are. And that's not a doing it weekly is just going to poison your entire audience. You just have to read Peter and the Wolf 20 times. Or not Peter and the Wolf, but think about the, Crying Wolf. I'm sorry. The little story about Crying Wolf that I don't mean Peter and the Wolf, but you should read Peter and the Wolf, listen to Peter and the Wolf 20 times because it's amazing. Anyway, so But think about crying wolf is that when you're constantly putting something out and it's not useful, people will just stop listening to you. And so you really we do something here and we focus heavily on service. We're answering people's questions and we're interacting with them and we're trying to make things better in that area. That's why people keep coming back, not because I don't talk about like that I do live streaming all the time. It's embedded into the idea. Next question.
And the last one from James in Dublin, Ireland, is vetting people before you allow them to join your Facebook group. What should we look for in building a good community?
Go ahead, John.
I'm part of a member of a group on it's a whiskey group in Scotch, and what they did before they let you join the group is you have to watch one of their videos and they have a secret keyword in the middle of the video, and that's how you join. I thought that was very clever.
Go ahead, Alex.
I with Robin manage the Apple Motion Facebook group, and we just ask one question that requires a click or two to find, and it's not obvious, but it's obvious to anyone who actually knows the software, because it seems to me that people follow every single group that they see, they even heard of, without knowing what it is. So we accept probably 1 in 3 people. No, 3 out of every 10 who apply do we accept, because most people get the answer wrong. And the trick is, I just did it as a multiple choice thing, but I put it as the 3rd out of 4. So people don't even know if they're wrong. They're really unlikely to get it. And then we have a really good community of nearly everybody on it seems to know what they're there for. So just the right question as multiple choice really helped us in our group, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think at least with the communities I'm part of, I really like how there are set ground rules, especially on what topics are we allow to be discussed there. Because like if it's a sound group, I don't want to hear about certain world leaders or whatever. So setting those ground rules is important, I think.
I do think that to the level of success that we've had so far in this group within Zoom has been pretty tight. We keep it pretty tight as far as extraneous conversations. I mean, we can get loose in the pre-show and the post-show and everything else, but not very. And, I think that has been a key to making it work. Go ahead, Leland.
One of the simplest things to watch for when you're building a community, and we built a community of 6,000 for Blab Nation on Facebook, watch the profiles that are coming in. Look for fake profiles, because those are going to be the trolls that are coming into your group to cause havoc. Don't allow things that don't have about me's or photos or a timeline over the last couple of years, because you're going to find these accounts can be left open for months and only have a few posts on them. It's a sure sign if it's a military figure trying to get your friend request or something like that. Don't let them in your Facebook group.
If you don't have a profile picture that looks like a person, like that I think that it might be you, I will not friend you. Like if someone sends me a request that has a picture of something other than them, if you have a picture of you with a Shep's mic, I will always friend you. like sound people, if you have them holding a pole or someone behind a big camera, I'll always accept that friendship, because I was like, it's someone in the club. So, but if you have, but again, I don't friend anybody that has an avatar or anybody that has anything other than a person, or if they're in crew, them in action. It just makes life simpler. Go ahead, Alex.
In the case of Facebook, as I'm using it as a kind of faceless marketing tool myself, I only friend people that I would actually want to go for a drink with or go for a meal with. So even people that I'd like who offer to be my friend, and I think I find you very interesting, but I don't actually know who you are, then I want to accept their friendship.
I don't have any problem with that. Next question.
One reminder,
Alex,
we'll keep going. We'll keep moving. Next question.
It comes from somebody named Daria Musk, who apparently is on planet Earth. That's cool. I'd love to hear from the panel what they think has the best algorithmic juice, great band name, on each of the most popular social platforms, like short, vertical, or square video Instagram. Where does the live video platform perform the best?
Go ahead, Leo.
Oh, it depends on your audience. In your audience is the audience. I think Instagram is an absolutely brilliant platform for a certain demographic, and I think it's a horrific platform for others. A lot of the stuff that I do, which is posting for houses of worship, it doesn't work there. That's not where their audience is, and so consequently, although we could change it. Also, IG and the fact that it does 4:3 doesn't really work in most people's production platforms. And finally, I'm a friend of Alex, so he wants to go for a beer with me.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dario.
Yeah, no, thanks. I thought this would just be a cool topic of discussion. And obviously, I've been on the socials for a long time, but I know a lot of what's happened for me in my career has been. Are you guys still with me? Oh, sorry. And so yeah, a lot of luck and a lot of goodwill and a lot of fun. But I'm also just kind of asking for other artists like me, because I feel like a lot of the time it's a shot in the dark, and people are just kind of posting willy-nilly or doing what we love, but we don't realize that the algorithm has changed. And sometimes I see people who seem to know what's going on. So I was like, is there a secret club where people know all of a sudden there's a change or something? Like, how do you guys stay on top of that? And if you have best practices for other artistpreneurs like me?
Yeah, go ahead, Ant.
Yeah, it seems like Instagram was the biggest moving target, but they seem to have slowed down to really push you more on the live side of things and reels, because they're trying to keep up with TikTok. So I highly recommend the live musicians spend more time with Instagram Live, because they really push those notifications out.
I agree. Yeah, I just did 100 live shows inspired by this show. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing about it with is be careful of cross posting stuff. So a lot of people, like for instance on TikTok, people will take their Instagram square videos and put them on TikTok. And I can tell you the behavior for most TikTok users, they just pass them up. Like unless they're really popular, and they might be John Mayer or something, and they'll still like them. And so people think that's a good idea, but you really want to think about being as native to each platform as you can, and really doing what the platform is designed for, as opposed to doing something else. But you do pay attention to those. Unfortunately, they don't tell us what those algorithms are. They want to keep that, they don't want people to game the system. So they don't tell us how it works. Like for a long time, for instance, the reason we got so good at shooting screens with our cameras was because Facebook for a period of time would basically send out to all of your followers a live stream that was originating from a mobile phone, but not from RTMP. And so we built all these rigs to shoot screens so that we could still be on a mobile phone, but we were doing a full switched input, into it. And so we would game that algorithm. But unless you really are in the know, it's probably something that we could talk about algorithms for a whole second hour. There might be that of talking. Like for instance, I know that if I post a YouTube link on Twitter, I'll probably be penalized for the next week. Like you go into the a YouTube video on Twitter is a penalty, and so it is. And so I do it, but I only do it about once a week. I go, well, this is going to hurt. We did our one yesterday was so good about everyone's kit that I went ahead and threw it on Twitter. But I knew that I'm going to pay a price for that, because it'll still stay in the feed, but what it won't do is it won't get recommended. It won't be in the, hey, these are the things you're missing. Like that's the stuff that you get knocked out of every time you do it. Go ahead, Sky, and then Guy.
I'm just curious about the conduit. I know when YouTube came out and says, no, we do not have the secret sauce, but we do have the algorithms of history of letting people know. And once you understand that we are Google's product, that's the why of they're going to gather that information so that they can sell more advertising.
Well, they're just, I think that in general, I know, but to get to they just want you to stay on their platform.
Well,
so if you do things, if you
point,
cross,
isn't it?
So if you're taking people out of the platform.
Is that the point of each of these different platforms? They want you to stay on that platform.
And they want you to, and they also want you to natively post to their platform. They don't want you to post from, because the cross posting is what we all want to do. We all want to cross post because what we're doing is exactly what the platform doesn't want, which is that we're spreading our risk. So we're constantly moving what I want to do is constantly have my followers from one side go to all the other ones, so that I'm never in a position where I have all of my following in one place. But what they want is all your following in one place. So Guy.
Yeah, I'd say bury that link down below in the comments. So what you do is take the time to craft a nice post, which is, grab a still frame from that YouTube video that you really like that tells the story, and then begin the conversation. And that's the way to do it. Otherwise, you're going to YouTube jail for a week, and you don't want to do it.
Go ahead, Leo.
I think it goes more than that. And I've said it before on this, which is Our job isn't to tell people which platform to use. You shouldn't be trying to convince your followers that you want them to move to different platforms. So the platforms hate it when you try and do that. It's like turning around to saying, thank you for buying our CD, but we really prefer you listen to this on vinyl. That's not going to get you many CD sales if that was the platform of choice in the past.
And the way I look at it
in the one place.
The way I look at it is I'm using each platform for the thing it's best at, and I'm telling people on other platforms where that's happening. I don't send it to all the platforms. We will be streaming this to all the platforms, mostly as a test. I just need the data. So we'll stream it to this. As soon as we get the whole streaming thing worked out, we're then going to be streaming to everything because I just want to see how many viewers show up in different places. The one that I'm most concerned about, as I said before, is LinkedIn. And so I'm trying to get everybody here ready for that because I will literally, if people are out of, like if I stream to my own LinkedIn account, if anyone here is out of order at all, I'll just kick them out. Like, cause I can't afford it. So we're trying to tighten all the things as fast as we can. Go ahead, Rupert.
So in terms of linking between platforms, to Ken's point, what about linking back to your own website and then linking people out from there in like a hub and spoke model?
Yeah, I mean, that's, to Ken's point, that is a great way to do it, is to have that. I've lived without a website for a long time. So because I'm just in the social and I just, have those things. But to your point, that we're about to build a website to kind of do that. And I'm just it's a long story, but I'm trying to figure something out related to the name. And once we figure that out, we'll get it up. Go ahead, Alex.
I used to do 1 or 2 blog posts a week and feed people to my blog with a couple of Twitter accounts. But now I don't think hardly anything that I'm going to be able to post to get people to go to my website is going to pull people out of either Facebook or Twitter where I am. And I don't expect that content to do that. So I actually just live in those places and don't expect people to move away from them is my policy. But I will link to a YouTube video, not because I don't care about YouTube jail, because I don't rely on Twitter to recommend my account to anyone. I just want the people who follow me to get good response from it, and then for them to tell other people or to see 1 or 2 tweets from me and realize what they're going to get from me. So that's the feed. So yeah.
Go ahead, John, and then Leland.
So Rupert brings up a great point here. I've watched too many people gain notoriety on platforms only for those platforms to let them down. So driving all those people back and capturing that content, email, phone number, and building that database up is extremely important today.
Next question.
Roman Kuryuk of Kyiv, Ukraine is back in again today with, what do you think is the best length for the product presentation video produced for social networks? What length is most profitable in the meaning of lead generation?
Go ahead, Leland.
We find 3 to 5 minute videos are the most attractive to individuals who are on social, who are flipping through news feeds. That's usually about as long as they want to sit on your video before they want to pan to the next video. If you're looking at long form content, try not to go over an hour. Half an hour is typical, 20 to 30 for a podcast, obviously. So if you're doing a video podcast, you want to keep it around that range, unless you've got some deep content to work with. We've been realizing with the License to Rant show that we have interviews with some very interesting people. And by the time we get to the hour, they're like, man, I wish we had another half hour to go, because after introductions and book promos and things like that, it comes down to, we didn't get enough, so please come back. So sometimes if you have a good guest and somebody that's very interesting to listen to, let it roll over a little bit, maybe 15, 20 minutes past the hour, and see where that gets you for engagement.
Now, Ant knows a little bit. He does a little podcasting every once in a while.
Sometimes. The ad agencies will have 30 to 60-second ads on television. There's a reason for that. If you have a good enough description in your post or what have you, put that 30 to 60-second video in that post. It's going to create just enough interest to make them click through and go into it a little bit more.
Good guy.
Yeah, this video that we put up is 20 minutes long. So some people argue that 20 minutes is too long. This video became the #1 search in Google when you searched for the word video mixer. I mean, you couldn't pay for that. And this was just, organic. 417,000 views, 671 comments, and we still get phone calls to this day from this video. So it's crazy when you get it right. And sometimes it's luck, but this is just a pure giving one. This is just, all the info about switchers and how they're used with decimators and ninjas and all this stuff. But I found that one striking to me is just when you think you got it right, you do something and it goes against, everything. I would have said 7 minutes before, and now this one's 20 and it killed it.
Yeah, and you won't know. I posted something. Most of my stuff gets. You look at the thing in Twitter, and for me, if I get about 4,000 or 5,000 impressions, that's kind of average. If something gets to 20 or 30,000 or maybe 40,000 impressions, I'm like, wow, that was popular. But I had one a couple of weeks ago that I got 190,000. I was like, I don't understand. I have no idea and it was like a quip. So it usually means someone randomly jumped on it. But I will say that I think the most important thing is protein. Like, just don't. The worst thing to do is to promote yourself on your own, in my opinion. Like, you'll notice that I try to keep it to the content as fast as I can. And I try not to talk about what I do or what I'm trying to have people do anywhere in it, if I can avoid it, and so maybe at the end, if you get all the way to the end, I'll say something like, hey, I do this thing and you can join or whatever. But nowadays, and the other thing that I try to do is stack all the important content to the very beginning. Like, as soon as you turn it on, I want you to get what you came for in the first 60 to 90 seconds. Then if you're still there, I'll dig in a little deeper. And if you're still there, I'll dig in a little deeper, but it's the exact opposite of what it seems like everyone gets trained to do on YouTube, because I have to skip over the please subscribe to me, like the 30 seconds of please subscribe to my channel. Like, oh my gosh, just if I like your content, I will get to that. I don't need any opens. I don't need any previews. I don't need any little music at the beginning. I don't need any of that. I just want to get me to I think that's all vestiges of TV. Like, hey, we're going to have an open and then we're going to have a thing. And then I'm like, just let's just get to it. I do the intro every morning for this show because it's training everybody. We're talking about stuff to have people understand how the show works, because it is unlike anything else on the internet. So I have to kind of set people up and different people hear it every day. Next question. Let's go. We're going to start running out of time.
Daria's back with the next highest rated question in our list. Let's talk about building an international community around an interest or topic. Do you guys have best practices for finding and gathering your tribe online globally?
Actually meant intentional community. I mean, international, of course, because that's the fun of the internet. But yeah, I just thought this would be another cool topic. Again, like, I've lucked into wonderful little pockets of the internet, but now, even as I take the next steps in my career, like intentionally building community around certain topics, like around being musicians or whatever, and wanting to reach out to people who I haven't bumped into by chance yet through my music. I wanted to know what you guys thought about that kind of stuff.
I think constantly looking for doing a great example of what you're doing. So I always have a show that I will go back to. So if I'm going to send something out, so right, there's always the high watermark of shows. Like, what is the high watermark of my shows? And so for this one, the high watermark currently is the Sound Devices one that we did on Tuesday. Like John just crushed it. And it was a tight show. The first hour was tight. The second hour was tight. There was a lot of information. So now when I talk to people who I want to bring on the show, that's the example. Before that it was Frame.io. Before that it was, it's always like whatever the last best show was that I can show you an example of what we do. So I'm always looking for just on Twitter, just got Brian Van Der Ark to come and join us, and then and I realized I probably could have started with Daria, but then show the key is you build the show that you want to build, and then you show people this is what we're doing, and then each show I'm trying to make it better than what it was before, so that I can tighten it up so that I can, when I show it to someone, they go, oh, I understand now. Like, oh, I want to be part of that. And so that's the key. And then you keep on building up to someone, and I put it out there all the time, as far as how that works. Since no one else is raising their hand, we'll go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I would say, keep in mind that YouTube is a big search engine. And so if you're doing how-tos and you're just capitalizing on the fact that people are searching every day, like, you could type in how to whatever subject it is, cook eggs, and then after that put the letter A, then see how it auto-populates. B, see how it auto-populates, and that kind of gives you fodder for content. And the next thing is just teaming up with other people. I mean, that's the biggest thing is your audience.
Yeah.
It's symbiotic relationships. Your audience becomes their audience becomes your audience. If you can pull that off, that's the holy grail, really.
Yeah, collaboration
Totally.
is massive. Yeah,
Yeah.
cross pollinating. Rupert and then Leland.
I guess if you're dealing with an international audience, just be open-minded to different terminology that's used around the world to refer to things and be inclusive of that.
Yeah, I left a note in Mukana for the fact that it touches on Guy's topic here with the fact that YouTube, Facebook, and probably other platforms as well, read the first 10 or 20 seconds of your video and listen to the keywords that are used in that content so that they can put it in front of the right people. So rather than start, like Alex said, he doesn't start with an intro video. That's a good thing not to do. Start with about 10 to 30 seconds of intro of you speaking about the topic you're going to introduce so that the keywords are introduced in that vocal language that's going to be transcribed by YouTube or Facebook, and then run your intro video from there.
And the notes are important. We're really fortunate to have Jeffrey putting in all those Q&A notes that are inside of YouTube. It's an amazing thing that we have there that makes it more searchable. We have a lot of people that join our community because they found us through the, just a general search. Next question.
Marty Atias of Silver Springs, Maryland's up next with, to be successful on social media, you have to feed it. How do you manage your time to read and respond to multiple platforms and also get any real work done?
Go ahead, Ant.
I use a service called Buffer because it does take a lot of work. So I will schedule out a lot of posts and tweets like that first thing in the morning. And then I also have a scheduled time to go and check notifications because, again, for me, it's all about community and connecting with people that follow me. So I have a certain 2 times a day where I go in and check notifications specifically just to say, hello, I saw your message and thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Dario.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ann. I think that also if you make sure that what you're doing is something that you're really passionate about too, and then you set that time, you actually find you look forward to that time, you're excited to connect with those people, and it actually juices up your day rather than feeling like a chore. When I got inspired by this show at the beginning of the year and I was like, I want to go live for 100 days in a row, I was like, okay, I'll do one song because I knew I could wrap my brain around that, and that became really fun to just be like, I looked forward to it rather than being nervous about it. After a couple of days, it was my favorite part of the day. This is my first week without it. I really miss it. I think I'm going to go back.
This is definitely, my favorite time. And like just hanging out with everybody. It's totally effortless to do because we've built a community. I saw this great quote on Twitter today that I'm going to paraphrase it because now I've ruined it, but it went by on my Twitter feed that just said, self-care is not bubble baths. It's building a life that you're not trying to escape. And it was just, I was like, yeah, and so figuring out how that works is useful. Next question.
James in Dublin, Ireland says Facebook pushes hard to boost live events after the fact. Is it worth it? And what are the best metrics to judge a successful boost?
Well, that's the money. I mean, here's the problem with Facebook is that you have almost no access to your own fans, like without paying for it. Like, so the advantage of getting fans on Facebook is that you can get a hold of them. So the reason that Facebook works is that you get a bunch of fans and a bunch of followers. Now that is a subset that you can advertise to. So you can advertise to people that are already connected to you and then people that are connected to them and so on and so forth. So in the graph, it gives you an access, but you still have to advertise to them. And so when they really decided that this is a business and they'd stopped investing in it and just giving it to everybody, like, because for a while to get it off the ground, they were telling everybody about your show, and then they immediately went to, okay, now you have to pay for it. And when they closed that down in early 2017, it kind of, it was a bloodbath. I mean, I was part of that, right? So that part of that bloodbath. And so for a lot of companies, they had built all their stuff around it and they didn't even understand it because no one gave them warning. And I will admit bluntly that's when I stopped using Facebook because I just got, completely driven into a brick wall by them. So I barely interact with Facebook now. So I do it a perfunctory amount of showing up. I show up and check messengers, but I never really got over it. So in my opinion, and overall, so I just wanted to state that because I am, I don't like Facebook because of that. And I don't like it for a bunch of reasons. And so I to just be be clear what the next words come out of someone who doesn't like Facebook, but they're making you pay for everything. The average view time on a live stream on Facebook is almost worthless. So like Instagram, and what you want to pay attention to on Instagram and Facebook is watch the average view time. If you're doing better than 28 seconds, you're above average. So the thing is that, but watch your average view time. Don't look at the reach. That's BS. Don't look at don't look at the number of viewers. Look at how many after 10 seconds, like throw everything else away. So it's people over 10 seconds, because that means they just saw it in their feed as they went by. But everyone shows the wrong numbers to their bosses, and to their clients and everything else, because it feels big. Those are big numbers. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, you don't have any more viewers on Facebook than you have on YouTube, like real viewers. And your average view time on YouTube is 10 to 12 times higher. So if you want a number that you can tell your clients, Facebook is a great platform and Instagram is a great platform. If you actually want real impact and real connection, then you're looking at, Zoom, Vimeo, YouTube, those are the ones that you're going to spend more time on. Facebook and Instagram are all sugar, and it's just pure sugar and no protein. Next question.
Sky Gleason here in the panel from Seattle, Washington. Of course, commercials from TV history are not stories, but are promoting or selling a thing. What place or places do marketing, promotion, and sales have on the different platforms?
Go ahead, Daria.
I'll speak to this just because it's what I have experience with, but I think when you take the idea of an ad and you bring it into that sort of sponsored content creative thing where you're actually doing something that is exciting creatively, that's, in my mind, the only place you want to go on the internet with advertising. I've partnered with a handful of brands that I love over the years and have had long-term relationships with that. And the coolest thing I can say from an artist perspective is when a brand, so if you're the one in the position where you want to think about doing this, when a brand goes, okay, we see that you love our thing, what do you want to do? My favorite thing is when I get carte blanche to create something that I find exciting. And most of the time when I've done that, especially with companies who haven't done that kind of storytelling before, those things outperform their other videos and their other ads like 12 to 1. It's really crazy. The work I've done with Taylor Guitars was really fun. Like before I started hanging out with them, they weren't doing any kind of like storytelling. It was all like, this is a guitar and this is the headstock and this is the string, And then I was like, let's tell a story about recording and about songwriting and bring you into my world. And it looked like a movie, and those things just kind of went crazy. And now that's a huge part of what they do. So I was super proud to push them in that direction. But yeah, I'd say partner with creatives. Well, and think creatively. Yeah.
And serve, I always just look at serve your market first, like with real information that they want to hear. Sometimes that is about your product. If you have a new product that you're launching, then it is telling them what that new product does and how it works. I want that information. But if you're in it, I always try to figure out like, how am I going to do something that my market wants, that they want to get to, and then I can figure. And then if I advertise, I'm just telling them about how to get there. I'm just making sure that everybody knows that it's here. It's all here. This is something that I made for all of you. That's what I'm always trying to get to. Go ahead, John, and then Mickey, then Guy, then Leo.
So I watch the YouTubers really closely, right? This influencer marketing business and the stuff that iJustine does, Mr. Beast, Casey Neistat, a lot of those guys, you follow them. What's interesting, it seems to be ephemeral though, because you watch them for a few months and then you kind of move on to the next person. But the stories that those guys are telling is amazing.
Well, and no, obviously I've known Justine for a long time, and the amount of work she puts into what she does is intense. Like she comes across as the most easygoing, just having fun. Oh, wow, I have a camera here. I'm just talking to you. And she is, when I met her in Pittsburgh, when she was before the iPhone thing and everything else, she handed me this magazine. I said, so what do you do? She goes, oh, I work on this magazine. And she showed me this little magazine that she had from Pittsburgh Art and Creatives and everything else. This is probably 2005. And I said, so what do you do on the magazine? She goes, I do the magazine. like she does the whole magazine. Like someone's not cutting for her or anything else. So it is and she does do a really good job of serving her market. Like she's got an audience she understands, and every day that she makes something, it's full of content. Mickey, and then Guy, and then Leo.
Yeah, just going back to what Dario was mentioning earlier, like with more modern platforms that are specifically like strongly community based, I'd rather have I'd rather the content creators create content that is so compelling that it makes me want more.
Yep.
And then that's marketing within itself.
Yeah. And Guy, and then Leo.
Yeah, when he says that they're not stories, I mean, that's to me what they are. I mean, we're humans. We remember stories. And so that's what you want to do is you want to invoke conversation. And so if you forget that, I mean, you're going to lose. The idea is that over time, though, I mean, like they say 7 times of seeing that brand is when you buy. And so it's that thing. It's an ongoing, transition over to their buying cycle because a lot of times people aren't buying at that moment that you're advertising to them. It's when they get their need. And so when they have a need for that product, then boom, ideally you're getting in front of them over time. And then you've earned the right to be in front of them and they're receptive to the message.
I mean, I look at Geico ads. If I see it's a Geico ad, I will totally watch it. Like I have no idea. Like I just know that they're going to talk about, like stop chucking that wood, you woodchuck. Like that is like, and it's just like I feel like someone there that just take a lot of drugs and then they think of some crazy story and then they make a video about it, and then they put Geico at the end. Go ahead, Leo, and then Daria. Pretty quick. We're now running out of time.
So very quickly, in the UK, the biggest rated adverts are always our Christmas adverts, which are stories. And it's been a big thing for a number of years of what the story is going to be. And that is always the best way, I think. If you're going to get something that's going to be engaging and lasting on, you want to teach the world to sing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Daria.
Yeah, and just to close that out, I think you'd be surprised how little you even need to talk about the thing, if there's a thing. I think also just uplifting your users, if that fits the model or the people who are the creators who use your product. If you let them tell their story and they don't even really have to mention the thing, all of a sudden you're creating a culture that people want to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Rupert, real quick.
There was a famous Cadbury's chocolate commercial, which was a gorilla playing the drums, and that was it.
Next question.
Roman's back from Kyiv, Ukraine, and he says, here we go. Now I've refreshed. What is the easiest way to get YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth inside of your stream? Do you need to use vMix, OBS, Wirecast, or is there some other way?
Go ahead, Leo.
Restream.
To get them into your stream, inside your stream, to get them coming to you from those different ones is the question, I think. I mean, for that, it's some kind of screen scrape. Go ahead, Leland.
I think they're referring to comment engagement with those platforms all at once so that you can have, because a lot of people are multi-streaming to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Restream has a built-in chat app that incorporates all of those. With vMix, it's vMix Social, which you have to connect each individual aspect of that app to the channels and then create titles that will import all that data, but it will designate where they're coming from. There's a few others like StreamYard and BeLive that bring in comments from the platform you're streaming to, which could be dependent on the platform. So BeLive only does Facebook right now. I think they're adding YouTube soon. And Twitch is another big place they go to. Haps TV, which is one we've just been experimenting with recently, allows you to broadcast to 10 locations from that platform, and it does bring in comments from those, but we've had a lot of issues with Facebook comments right now. Just looking to see if those will get fixed soon.
I don't like fragmenting my commenting audience. So I'll just let you know that I find that to be, unless you have a really large audience, it just becomes chaos. And so what I do is I figure out which one I'm going to actually listen to, and then I pay attention to that one. Now, for us, what we do is you'll notice when we start streaming to all the platforms, we're not going to interact with any of the comments there. We're going to tell them if you want to interact with the comments, you can come to Mukana, so that I can keep it all in one place. Because what I'm trying to do is they don't need to come to Zoom, but I do want them to all be part of the community that's there, because it'll be a better experience for them. I'm not going to have them be the 4 people that are over here talking to not interacting with the 12 people that are over there. Next question.
Larry Tang in Concord says, when posting on social media, what's the process to create one post that works for all platforms? I find I'm spending too much time trying to change the aspect to properly fit Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're going to have to spend that time. If you really want to fine tune for each, you have to do it that way.
Yeah, you definitely have to. When we work with agencies, that's what, I mean, there is a grid of all the things, and they just figure out how they're going to put all those things across all those platforms in the native format that they're doing, because it's just, don't bother. If you're going to do it halfway, just don't bother posting into those other ones. Just pick the one that you want to pay attention to. Leland, real quick.
There is an app out there called Relay that a friend of mine, Greg Carpenter, built back years ago when we were on Blab. It is an app that allows you to create templates on the fly. So if you make it for one, and I'm not selling this is no kind of affiliate thing. I'm just letting you know that when you create one template, you can literally brand that workspace to whatever brand you're working in, and then it'll create all the other template sizes for you automatically based on the graphics and text that you import into that message. So take a look at it just to play around with it and see if it works for you.
Go ahead, Leo.
Really quickly, I'm pretty sure there's still an AppSumo deal on that that will get you it for lifetime.
And I'd be really careful. I mean, I think that we're going to move past the kind of automated, I'm going to post a whole bunch of things to a whole bunch of platforms the way agencies have done it. I mean, I really take it as you really want to think about how to handcraft everything for each one of these, because the market is about to become much more difficult. You know, it's coming. Next question.
Jan Landy, our friend in Las Vegas, says Periscope has now stopped, so Restream recommended I use Twitter Media Studio Broadcast. Has anybody got any experience with this? I streamed my show on it yesterday, and it worked flawlessly, but not sure who viewed it, so Jan's looking for recommendations.
Go ahead, Leo.
So all of the stuff still works under Periscope. It all still connects in, everything still works. However, in the last couple of months, Twitter have downplayed all of the live stuff. When it used to be at the top of your app and it's there, it's now really tough to find live stuff. I don't know why they've done it. You literally can't find live stuff on Twitter anymore.
It's because their live platform is horrible. Like, I mean, I think that's why they have to re-gear the whole thing. The quality of the stream is so bad. You know, and but I will say that the Twitter Producer Studio is amazing. I've been using it for, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years. I mean, compared to Periscope, I mean, Periscope's silly. Like, it's, you know, the studio, the Producer Studio, I was put into it because of a brand that I was working with, and so I have it on mine so I can test stuff. And so I had it for a long time. I vastly prefer it than Periscope, which was really annoying. Leo?
Periscope shutting down anyway, I believe.
I know, it's shutting down because it stinks.
The question, Alex, if you know, I mean, one of the things I find with Periscope is that technically your audio quality just drifts and drifts and drifts down and down and down on there.
All the quality drifts and drifts and drifts.
But it's terrible. It's terrible. You sit there and listen to the same thing on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, and Twitter just sounds like garbage.
So Twitter did pretty well when it. I think I can say this. That when the big Twitter events that were on MLB, you know, MLBAM, Twitter worked great. You know, it looked good, it sounded good, and everything else. When they went back to their Periscope platform, which they had before, it kind of just fell apart. You know, because that platform wasn't. It was great for average folks, but doing shows on it was not great. And so they're, you know, you kind of feel like when you're working on it that it's kind of held together with baling wire. So it's, you know, it's really not a I think that they probably depreciated it because the quality is so low. Next question.
John Landy's back with another one. He was wondering how many people attending a Zoom meeting on a regular basis would be considered good, bad, and or spectacular in terms of number metrics.
People coming back is always a good thing. it means you didn't screw up the first one. Go ahead, Leo.
So indirectly, one of the things that I think is absolutely brilliant under Zoom that you can do is the fact that you send out the thing and you tell people put the meeting in their calendar. If there is anything I've learned over social media, people lose the fact that the get reminder, be reminded doesn't work on certain social media. It works much, much better if you can get it into their calendar. Getting something into somebody's calendar just is worth a million points. That's why doing things using Meetup or doing things in Zoom where it sends the iCal. Forget the rest you write in there. Just tell them put the calendar in there, and that works.
And I think that I obviously think that daily reminders are useful. So you know that I think that having that email there is. I always think it's funny when people unsubscribe or they send me an email going, I don't want to have this list anymore. I'm like, really? Because it's just like an email, like it's just bits, and you can just filter it out. But sure, I mean, you can turn it off. Go ahead, Ant.
I think there's more value in retention. You can have a Zoom session with 50 people in there and they only watch it for 5 minutes. But if you get 10 people and they watch it for the full hour, I think there's more value there versus the actual quantity of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you can always, I always look at average view time as my job. and it's average view time is what I worry about. Marketing can fix all the other stuff. So that if you can get strong average view time all the time, you can always build it up faster and get more people in. But I'd rather have something where a lot of people are. This show is about, in Zoom, is like 10x or 12 times the average YouTube average view time. But that's because we pay a lot of attention to that. No, next question.
Our friend Roscoe Jones, here often in the panel, wants to know, what's the best policy for limiting comments? Office hours YouTube commenting is open. They always had some not safe for work links added lately. Should you allow comments with moderation for only a limited time?
The only reason we have comments in YouTube is because it turns on automatically when I create the event, and the way that it's set up is I would have to do it while the show's running. I'd have to go and turn off comments or whatever, because it's generating that event live from Zoom. Once we move to live streaming to YouTube, and we have our full control over pre-scheduling the events, we'll just turn the comments off. I don't care about them in YouTube. Because it's the comments in YouTube and Facebook are just useless. So in my opinion, because of that, because you have trolls, you have a bunch of other stuff. You also, merging comments with questions is a disaster. And so I don't create any expectation inside of those comments. I try to clean up if someone brings them up or whatever, but I don't really, I'm just not paying attention. Leland?
I'm pretty sure on YouTube, but I know on Facebook that you can, in the setup for the live stream, limit the timing on the comments that are taking place to where people can't comment 10 comments within a minute. They have to wait
when you
10
create
seconds before another
yes,
comment.
absolutely. When you create the event, you can do that. But right now, Zoom is dynamically creating this event when we start every morning, and I can't. It just creates it the way it's set up, and I don't think it doesn't give me those controls when it's creating it, which means that, and I could go in the back end and turn it off and everything else. It's just that I can't do it while I'm talking. And so once we, and because it's a personal page and because it's a personal profile, not a page, I can't give Jeffrey the control he needs to do it. He would do it otherwise. So he can't have control over the live. That's the problem. So we're going to fix that soon. Next question.
John Landy's back again with, is it a good idea to have multiple pages and groups on a Facebook for the same company that's promoting different areas, ideas, and products they sell? Weekly Zoom meetings, friends of the company, and so forth. Or should he just have one main page and put everything there?
I think it's really easy to get fragmented. Have your audience not know where things are. So I find that when people start building lots of different pages and lots of different pieces, and I have lots of pages, but they're whole different things, and most of them are just test pages that are on Facebook. But I find that creating too many subdivisions, especially of the same company or the same product, can really confuse your followers. John?
Jan, it sounds like you need a good Facebook advertising guy. One page, and we often run 30 to 50 different campaigns for that page.
Next question.
And the last one in our regular grouping here, David Guzman of San Jose says, how do you collect email addresses from your Facebook shows? Or for that matter, off of YouTube shows? So contact harvesting.
You can't. I mean, they're designed not to give you that. I mean, there's some of that data, but the whole design of that is to not have you harvest that kind of data. Now, you still can. People hack into it and they grab it and everything else, but the goal is not to have users getting, that's what you use a email. I mean, that's what you do. You build your own website, or you build something else that's going to have people have to register with an email behind something. So you use Vimeo or something like that. You have a private page. People have to give you your email to get in. There's Hopin will do that kind of thing for you. I will say that era is going to end in the next couple of years. There's other ways to be in contact with people, and the era of getting people's emails, because people don't even read them that much as much. The problem is emails are becoming less and less useful. Like I don't see most, if the way my filters work, I don't see anything that is a spam. Like anything that is really not a product, like not something actionable for me, I don't see it in email. And I think more and more we're finding that the effectiveness of that is going down over each day, unless you do something like ours is mostly protein. So it seems that a lot of people open it, when they come from me, because I'm not spamming you. I'm telling you something that we're doing that is useful. All right, last question.
Yeah, Jan Landy just popped in with the last one. Says, idea for a second hour. How about a ruthless review show of folks' social media pages? Good or bad idea?
I don't know if we'd be able to do a whole, maybe, or yeah, a lot of us. The funny thing is that a lot of the great ones that people come in are not particularly great versions of it, but they're effective, and we don't really know why. I think that that woman who does, we talked about it on Twit, on I know that either on Twitter or MacBreak, that woman who does that resale thing in New Jersey is like the ugliest page I've ever seen, but they make millions on that page. So it's kind of sometimes hard to, I mean, like literally it hurts your eyes to look at it, but for some reason it works. But I think sometimes people mistake people coming to their page as, I have created the right thing. There's something about that that's right, but whether the colors and the layout or everything else is that thing is hard to say. But it's also very scary to fix anything, because like with office hours, I have lots of ideas, but I don't want to change anything quickly because there's like a magic to it, and you don't know what the spice is that made that really great just yet. So you have to be super careful about radically changing anything. All right. We are at the end of the hour. Daria, thanks for stopping by. It's good to see you. Ant, it's nice to see you here. Yeah, and everyone, rest of the panel, it's great. Yeah, absolutely. Come
Love
often,
hanging
both
with you
of you.
guys. Of course, always.
Absolutely, and so a great job by the producers, again, outstripping our ability to answer the questions by asking us lots of them. Make sure to use your time not only to ask the questions, but to vote on the questions, so that you're kind of giving us that order of what we should pay attention to. So if you're, again, to go back to the conversation that we had before, if you're worried that we're rushing through the ones at the end, they didn't get as many votes, or they weren't posted as early as the other ones, or a little bit of both. And so it's really, we're going to, for a while longer, we're going to continue to try to answer every question, which means at the end, we're going to speed up. Because I kind of want, I've been thinking about it while we're doing the show, is that I really want this still to be a momentary thing. Things dragging on to the next show or the next day or whatever. If you want to bring it up again, it's totally fine. If your question wasn't answered, we'll answer it again. But I think I don't want our past to bleed into our future. So I think that's kind of my approach. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I was wondering about questions with the same number of votes. What I sometimes find is a more recent question, say with 3 votes, gets answered before one that was asked like an hour early. So it'd be nice if you could sort on 2 levels by points, by votes, and also by time, so that the people who asked earlier, who are actually more prepared.
It's got to be, they have to ask a better question. Like if they got in earlier, they had the best chance they had the best chance to do it when they got in earlier. And oftentimes, what I'm saying is the voting is really important, because it's just now it's only representing 5 or 6 people right now, because we have 250 to 300 people all watching, and not all of them are voting. So when they all start, when more people vote, then it's a better representation of that. So the best fix is for people to vote on it. It is, that number. This will get, as the audience gets larger, this gets a lot more complicated. Like
this feed will be cut off after 30 minutes unless you vote on at least 5 questions.
The big thing is I don't want to get that manipulative about it. It's just like I'm just telling people, the idea is not so much to try to force a behavior. It's mostly to tell people how they're affecting the show, and then letting them choose that they're going to vote or be part of it, or they're not. But the more they vote on the questions and the more they interact with it, the better the show will get, because it'll be more representative of more people watching if they're interacting. If they're asking questions, if they don't have any questions, just make their time opening up that question thing and voting on some of the questions that they have there. And it's a little easier to do in the desktop version. I think that what happens oftentimes is people in the mobile version, they kind of lose sight of the questions. And I think that's the majority of folks are using the mobile version, even on desktop, which is a problem that I have to solve. Bill?
Yeah, there's also a point. Since I'm moving the questions into the public-facing system, depending on where I am in the mic checks at the beginning of the day, usually it's somewhere around 10 minutes before the show goes live that I'm pushing those first 3 questions. Once I do that, they're locked. I often find that when the biggest group comes at the top of the hour, we get higher voted numbers, but those had to be there so I could set up the system.
But I don't think you do. I mean, I think that I would recommend that you do that right while I'm doing the announcements, as opposed to before that. That's my recommendation. Is just wait until once I get to, not move anything over until I'm like halfway through my announcements, so that we can suck up as much of that as possible.
Okay, I will try to amend my behavior.
Yeah. All right. We're figuring it out slowly. Yeah. It's like a slow, it's like, it's an experiment. Fortunately, we do it every day, so we iterate very quickly. So anyway, thanks to everyone. A great job by the producers who were asking all the questions. Great job by the panelists. Another great discussion. Better than the last one every day. How do we do this? I don't know. It's all your fault. All right. We'll see you on the other side in the post show. Bye-bye.